As it turned out, he was not there to run me off. He just wanted to know if I needed any help and asked where I was heading. I answered, I'm headed to Lawrence, and no, I don't need any help. I was just curious about the arch. Then I asked, how much does it cost to ride to the top? It's $2. Do you have any money? He asked. I replied, no. The guard told me he would try to get me a ticket, and I could rest on the bench as long as I liked. Then he went off to guard whatever needed guarding. I didn't wait around because I was suspicious that his kindness may have just been a tactic to stall me while he called the real police. I left the arch and made my way to the interstate. It didn't take long before I caught a ride going all the way to Lawrence. 6 hours later, I got out of the car and thanked the driver and started walking south from the turnpike. Looking back on this vision of myself, walking down that road with freedom blowing through my hair, I have to tell you there were moments out there on the road that were pure magic because absolutely no one knew where I was. I was free as a breeze and could do as I pleased, and it was intoxicating. I still had this salty dog drunk on life feeling as I walked past old familiar landmarks like the local grocery store where, as kids, we used to turn in our pop bottles for change to buy penny candy. That's when I thought about my mother. I was walking only blocks from where the house stood that guarded the ghosts of my childhood. I raised my eyes to the bridge over the Kansas River and walked a little faster as I heard my mother's haunting words. Run as fast as your little legs can go. I thought about her as I started across the bridge. I knew the river held many secrets and drowned souls, and that one of the secrets it held on its thick, fat, muddy black bottom was the gun that had killed her. I stopped in the middle of the bridge and looked down into the broiling, muddy water, just past the dam with its dangerous undertows as the cars rushed by. I remembered as kids we had always been warned about this part of the river and about how dangerous it was. We were raised on stories about people who had drowned there. Over the years, those warnings and stories had become legends we carried into our adult lives. I stood in the storm of feelings and memories, alone on that bridge, and thought about my mother. Turning from the river, I put the genie back into the bottle, re-shouldered my pack, and walked to the other side of the bridge onto Massachusetts Street, or Mass Street as the locals called it. Then I headed straight to the nearest bar. The facade of the building was clad in cobalt blue ceramic tiles, and the bar was represented by a single unmarked door. This was a bar where you either knew it was there or you didn't. Definitely a locals' watering hole that occupied the lower half of the Carpenters' Union Hall. Back in the day, my grandfather, Otis Wiggins, had been the local rep for the union. I stopped with my hand on the door handle and looked up to the sea of cobalt blue tiles that were interrupted only by windows where my grandfather's office used to be. I could picture him at his desk in his khakis and fedora hat, smoking a cigar. I pulled the door open, corking another genie into the bottle, and entered the dimly lit bar. The ceiling fan blades churned the overheated air that was thick as buttermilk. It took a while for my eyes to adjust as I walked over to the bar and climbed up on a stool. The bartender asked, "What'll it be?" I ordered a cold Budweiser. He ordered my ID. After careful scrutiny, he flipped it and a coaster onto the bar. With my gear at my feet, I sat on the stool and counted my change onto the bar. Pulling the buffalo nickel from the pile of change, I put it back into my pocket. The bartender scowled at my pile of change that did not include the nickel or a tip and set the beer down with a thud. He scooped up the change and started counting it as he walked away. I paid him no mind and tilted the bottle to my mouth. After a long, thirsty drink, I set the beer on the coaster and looked down the bar. I'd hitchhiked all the way from California, and I exuded the air of a traveling man. I was gritty from the road, and even in the winter degrees of Kansas, I carried warm California sunshine in my eyes and pure rock and roll in my heart. I was feeling quite full of myself. I'd survived a horrific truck wreck and had not fallen prey to roving bands of rednecks looking to shave my head to make an example out of me because I looked like one of them long-haired freaky fag commies. Yes, I've survived one hell of a trip, and I deserve this cold beer, I thought. A voice thick with alcohol sliced through this thought, and I turned to face a man sitting a couple of bar stools away. "You one of them Wiggins boys?" he asked. I nodded my head. "Well, which one of them are you? What's your dad's name?" I tilted my beer again, took a long drink, and then answered, "My name is Carl, same as my father." "Oh, shit," he said, and then took a long pull from his beer. "You mean that fart in the whirlwind?" If he'd said that to me today, I would have had a witty comeback that would have cut him down so low he would have had to roll his socks down just to spit. Or maybe he would have got his ass kicked. But back then, I just stared at him and said, "Yes, that's him. The fart in the whirlwind. Yep, that's my dad." I drained my beer, slid off the bar stool, grabbed my gear, and walked out of the bar. I walked down Mass Street under a dividing line of blue sky and approaching snow clouds. With my pack on my back, I walked, enjoying the looks I got from people on the street. I imagined they were looking with envy and wonder of where I'd come from and where I was going as they did their square 9-to-5 grind. I was hungry after drinking the beer, but hunger was nothing new to me. As a child growing up, I'd gone hungry a lot. It was not always because we didn't have food. Actually, it was because I just couldn't eat certain things like liver or any internal organs like the cow brains scrambled with eggs that my father was so fond of, or tongue, or all the wild game that we had to eat to survive, especially squirrel and pigeon. I hated both of those. But my stepmother, with all her faults, was an excellent cook, and her black cast-iron skillet fried chicken was the absolute best you'd ever eat. I always loved it when she fried chicken, because once the grease had cooled, I would scoop out and eat the salty, crispy little nuggets that were left behind. Her meatloaf and fried potatoes, and pinto beans, goulash, and chili were the best. I give Helen all the credit for my cooking skills because, man, she could cook. Now, my mission was to find shelter and food. So I went looking for Gloria, one of my favorite cousins who lived just a few blocks over from Mass Street. As I was cutting through the parking lot of the old Kroger store, it started to snow. I couldn't help but think about the first time I'd ever eaten real, whole, fresh, well, kinda fresh pineapple. So walk with me as I tell you this little story I call Wrestling Walter Puckett. Author's Commentary. My therapist seemed to be really interested in my father, more than the rest of my family. My father was an ongoing subject of intense discussion, spanning a period of almost 5 years. Unfortunately, I never had a chance to share with him this one of only a few dreams I ever had of my father. So I am going to share this for the first time here with you. It had been many years since I had any dreams about my father. But a few weeks after his death on June 9th, 2009, I had this really freaky dream about him. The dream began in pitch-black space. I slowly became aware in the dream as a splinter of golden light in the distance came into my vision. Slowly, cautiously, I moved toward the light. I moved closer and closer until I could bend slightly and put a fearful eye right up to the light. I blinked from the brilliance. I was looking through the crack of a slightly opened door, open only maybe an inch or so. I was looking at a lighted stage. The only thought I had was, the Johnny Carson show? What the fuck? I totally freak out when I saw my father's ghost glide from behind the curtain and stop just like he was appearing on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. I felt afraid he would see me, but I could not stop watching. In this dream, my father was the younger version of himself, black hair groomed 50s style, looking a little bit of Kansas farm boy with a touch of James Dean thrown in, wearing his 501 straight-leg Levi's and white T-shirt under a Levi jacket with the collar flipped up. He was wearing white socks and penny loafers with bright, shiny pennies tucked into the gaps on the tongues. He stood in a pool of golden light, rotating slowly as if he was standing on a lazy Susan. He never said a word. He just stood there in the light, rotating slowly. I don't know where the glowing light was coming from either. It might have been from heaven, or it might have been from Hell's Kitchen cooking up his next meal. From somewhere behind the curtain, I could hear glass breaking and pots and pans hitting the floor, and my dad was just standing there in the light, slowly spinning, mute like a wax statue. And damned if it didn't sound like Chef Ramsay screaming something in the background at his Hell's Kitchen demons with what sounded like, "Does this look fucking done to you?" The dream continued as the stage darkened. My father's ghost slowly started to spin on stage. I watched from pitch-dark blackness through the crack in the door as he gathered speed and started to spin faster and faster and faster until he finally burst into a flaming tornado of tortured soul. My fearful eye retreated from the fiery burst, then beat a hasty return to the crack to see the fiery tornado spin into a fine needle of bright silvery light. Suddenly Johnny Cash pours from the stage speakers with, "I fell into a burning ring of fire. I went down, 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 and the flames went higher. And it burns, 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 the ring of fire." Exit the image of my father as the bright silver needle faded into a whisper-thin essence of silver-gray ashy smoke that spiraled up from the floor like smoke from a gunfighter's six-shooter. That was it. I woke up feeling really weird, wondering, what the fuck did that mean? Chapter 9. Wrestling Walter Puckett. No matter where you're from, I bet you had your own versions of our local legends. In Lawrence, Kansas, we had two main characters who were legends. We had the Tan Man and Walter Puckett, plus a few other characters like the Hat Lady, the Blue Lady, and the Walking Man. The Tan Man was the most recognized and was known to everyone. I remember as a child seeing him, and over the years he never seemed to change. On any given day we could see him pushing or riding his bike. He would be in shorts, boots, and nothing else, tanned and brown as a bean. It could be snowing, raining, sleeting, anything, and the Tan Man would be shirtless like a sun sponge, soaking up whatever sunshine he could get. When we were kids, if we saw him walking or riding his bike, we'd yell out the car window, "Hey, Tan Man!" He'd just smile and wave. He really was a local personality, and everyone knew John Schneider by that name. I recently did a Google search for the Tan Man and found a Lawrence Journal-World report that said he was alive and well in 2006, working at Lawrence Memorial Hospital. Enter Walter Puckett. My memory of Walter Puckett is a dark childhood image of a grizzled old man, unshaven and sinister-looking, with thick, black-framed, broken glasses that sat on his hawkish nose like a black bird with a crook wing. My mental image of Walter Puckett has always been stark in black and white. In my childhood memories, I see him pushing an old bike with a wire basket clamped to the handlebars. He's wearing a long, greasy black coat with old, black, half-fingered gloves covering crooked, gnarled fingers that he used to push his glasses back onto his nose as he rummaged in garbage cans behind grocery stores and businesses up and down Mass Street. As a child, I grew up hearing about Puckett and his eccentric ways. He ate out of dumpsters and lived in a dark, scary old house in North Lawrence. Rumor had it that he had lots of cash, which he kept stashed in his walls and in trash cans and big bags. Anyway, that was the myth. I had actually only seen him a few times as a kid, and it was these rare sightings and the myth and the mystery of Walter Puckett that fueled the fire of my young imagination. For you to fully understand this story, I have to tell you this. We were what people called dirt poor, and as the saying goes, my dad didn't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out. No, that's just how it was. We trapped and hunted for most our meat, putting a serious dent in the squirrel, or tree rats as we called them, population. So I went hungry a lot as a child, and I refused to eat squirrel and other wild varmints. Seriously, it was like living with the fucking Beverly Hillbillies. We heated with wood and hauled our own water, either from the well or from the county water supply outside town. We had no indoor plumbing, and in a couple of houses we lived with no electricity. My stepmother actually cooked and heated water for our baths on a wood cook stove, and we took baths every other night in a big galvanized tub. These were hand-me-down baths, because the water was only changed after 2 or 3 of us had bathed. Thank God I was second in line. I felt bad for my sister, who was always last. It was a hard-scrabble life, to be sure. We always appreciated the little deviations from our routine and diet, like going to town day, where if we were lucky, we might get a cheeseburger from Griff's Drive-In, or even better yet, maybe a burger from Henry's. And we never turned down candy or fresh fruit. Our family rarely went to town together, but early one evening our parents rounded us up. With 5 kids only 1 year apart in age, it was kind of like trying to stack BBs in the wind. But they managed, and we set off for town to get groceries. This always created a certain kind of electricity amongst us kids, because maybe we could get some candy or sunflower seeds or something. We just never knew. All I can see right now is an image of my poor father with us 5 devils in the back seat, each with our sugar dreams and desires, and him without his piss pot. That's some sad, funny shit right there. You may have noted, and it is true, that there are only a handful of fond memories I have of my father. Mostly I saw him as a beast who berated, belittled, and humiliated me, and who dealt out vicious whippings with the big black belt. But as I've said before, we deserved a great many of the hidings we took. We were not little angels. Nonetheless, I have not much good to say about my father in my younger years, except for this one particular time, on this rare family night outing to the grocery store, when I saw my dad as a hero of sorts. My dad pulled into Kroger's parking lot, and my stepmother's fingers shot evil blue lightning at us as she warned each and every one of us that we had better behave or else while they went shopping. Like salt statues, we froze in the glare of the evil blue light, avoiding our eye contact because the devil danced and played in our eyes. We sat still as long as we could, but the second they turned the corner, the devil leaped from our eyes and the chaos began, grab-assing and fighting, teasing our sister, and just generally raising hell. By the time our parents returned, we'd calmed down. We were unhappy to find out there were no treats for us, just a bag of beans and a sack of potatoes and some onions. Man, we had some long faces. But then our father said, "Wait a minute, I'll be right back." He got out of the car and walked to the back of the store. We couldn't see where he'd gone, but soon we heard a loud metallic clang that sounded like a Chinese gong echoing back to us from the alley. Then we heard a lot of banging and thrashing and yelling and cursing and tin cans hitting the ground. We were freaking out, sitting there on the edge of the back seat with our hands gripping the back of the front seat, craning our necks for a better look, wondering what the hell was going on. After a few minutes, we saw our father step from the alley with his arms above his head, walking to the car like he was holding a trophy or something. He walked all the way to the car with whatever it was, holding it high over his head. As he got to the car, our eyes were bugging out with curiosity. Our stepmother reached over and opened the door, and in the warm glow of the interior light, my father proudly displayed the trophy. We were stunned into silence. It was a pineapple. My father was grinning like he was the heavyweight champ of the world as he rotated it for our viewing pleasure and said, "You kids know what this is?" Of course we knew. We'd seen pictures of them, and we'd even seen them in stores. And a couple of times we'd eaten pineapple from cans, but we had never eaten a fresh one. This was the holy grail of fruit produce, and it was only slightly spoiled on one side. We all got out of the car as our dad got his pocket knife out and removed the spoiled part. He sliced it up right there on the trunk, and we feasted on it right there in the parking lot. Between dripping, sticky, sweet mouthfuls of the pineapple, we asked what had happened in the alley and where the pineapple had come from. My dad said in a voice somewhat full of pride, "I had to wrestle Walter Puckett for it in the dumpster." Our sweet, sticky mouths hung open and our fingers dripped juice. I looked at him in awe as my imagination played out a fierce battle between him and Walter Puckett, fighting like gladiators, head butting, gouging eyes, kicking, biting, and punching it out in the dumpster for the pineapple. And in that moment I thought, damn, my dad is a real badass to have whipped Walter Puckett in a dumpster for a pineapple. And that is the story of wrestling Walter Puckett. Truly, the moral of this story is, to the victor go the spoils. Looking back, I think it was really cool that my dad put on that great performance just for us kids, even though he really never did wrestle Puckett for the pineapple. Author's Commentary. I remember when I was younger hearing a tragic story about some guys who had tied Walter up in his house and had beaten him up in an effort to get him to tell him where his money was hidden, but he died without telling them. I heard that during the investigation the police did find trash cans full of money, and cash was found hidden in the walls and other places throughout the house. I called my cousin, Ray Otis Wiggins, to see if he could help me with the truth of this story. He told me that he heard this story also, and it was true, except that Walter had not died during the robbery. I did a little further research on the internet and found that Walter Puckett actually died peacefully at the Lawrence Memorial Hospital in 2013 at the ripe old age of 92. This story is as true an account as I can give from a very old childhood memory of Walter Puckett, and I mean no disrespect to the memory of Walter or the Puckett family. Epilogue. The summer of 1976 started there on the doorstep of my cousin Gloria's house on Oregon Street. As I stood outside knocking on her door, Peter Frampton was rocking the house with Do You Feel Like We Do? I could smell marijuana smoke and strawberry incense. Gloria finally answered the door in all her hippie glory, wearing hip-hugger jeans. A long floral print scarf covered her forehead and was tied in the back under her full red hair, Jimi Hendrix style. When she saw it was me, her Tootsie Roll brown eyes lit up and her freckled face opened into a wide grin as she started doing a little shimmy dance, shrieking my name, Carl Dwayne! When I was 5, when I'd arrived to my grandmother's house, I'd told Gloria and her sisters a story of jelly spiders. Now, 13 years later, I was back and telling Gloria a story of what had happened between my dad and me, and how I'd run away and hitchhiked all the way from Baldwin Park, California, to Kansas. Drinking beer and smoking big fat joints rolled in strawberry zigzag papers, we listened to the rest of the Frampton album and got very stoned. I captivated Gloria and her friends with stories of wrecking the cool little yellow truck outside Amarillo, Texas, and about Lonesome Red, and about how the county worker had almost ran over me with the mower outside St. Louis. We partied late into the night. Gloria invited me to crash there at her house, and all was well and right with the world as I rolled out my sleeping bag in the corner and passed out. To be continued. Postscript. We all have crosses to bear and stories to tell. My cross is just a little heavier than most, and my stories are a damn sight more interesting than most. I read once that if you're going to write about yourself, then you damn well better be interesting. I considered this in the most serious way before I started this project, and I am confident I will not disappoint. To this point, you've been given just the tip of the iceberg, just a few of the dark hardship stories I've chosen to use as a foundation upon which you will see a house of success built against all odds. Now I'd like to share with you, shall we say, some food for thought. My dad once told me a story about a guy on a bus who complained every day about not having any shoes. Then one day while he was on a bus complaining about not having any shoes, he saw a guy sitting across from him who had no feet. The moral of the story, and my point, dear reader, is this. There is always someone worse off than you or me. Even on our worst day in this great United States of ours, we still have it better than most anyone else in the world. This is not Sri Lanka, the Congo, Somalia, Angola, or any of the other hundreds of war-torn, poverty-stricken places in the world where women and children are raped, mutilated, and murdered. where genocide, starvation, and disease are rampant and common. My perspective is intact. In telling you my stories, I hope to amaze, entertain, and educate you. What I want you to take away are lessons about survival and hope, how to deal with tragedy and adversity, how to conquer fear, and most importantly, how to laugh at yourself and not sweat the small stuff. For example, this black dude once complained to me that as a child his family was so poor one day they didn't even have mayo for their sandwiches, to which I replied, "Damn it, man, you had bread?" In conclusion, to all the crybabies and whiners who complain, like rapper Eminem in his movie 8 Mile, about his hard life on 8 Mile Road, or the guy who complained about not having any mayonnaise for his sandwich, or the fictional guy who complains about having no shoes for his feet, I want to say, shut the fuck up. So how was that for a little snack, a little brain food? Are you with me? The cowboy drops another quarter, and the 45 spins on the table. The speakers spit out Bachman-Turner overdrives. You ain't seen nothing yet. Like the song says, I'm telling you this. You ain't seen nothing yet. Wait until the next series of installments. This first book is the pilot episode, if you will. It is only the first of a much, much larger body of work. Part 1 is the flagship, the tip of the spear. What is coming is the whole shaft, which is going to burn right through your heart, mind, and soul as you read to the ultimate climax, and then freefall down the backside to a punch-in-the-stomach conclusion. I'll deliver these awesome smash-mouth stories right to your door. Believe me when I tell you this, we're just getting started. Who the hell is Larry Bowman? This book is also a special dedication and tribute to my late great friend Brad Bush, a.k.a. Mr. Wizard. Born February 18, 1951, died January 29, 2016. Rest in peace. About the author. Carl D. Wiggins has a postgraduate degree from the proverbial School of Hard Knocks. His colorful, sometimes painful, frequently filled with hard lessons, often hilarious life experiences would rival the vibrant primary hues found in a first grader's crayon box. He's been knocked down, run over, beaten up, tried and convicted. Yet he's always gotten back up, squared his shoulders, and re-entered the fray. His message to the world, taught by his example and the stories he shares, is to learn from the mistakes, find the humor, keep on keeping on, never give up, and reach for a better tomorrow. Writing is Carl's true passion, but to help pay the bills, he's also had a successful career spanning the last 11 years as a truck driver. In August 2016, he became vested with Prime Incorporated, where he was recently recognized and honored as a gold millionaire for outstanding performance as a professional driver with 1 million miles accident-free while at Prime Incorporated. In his free time, Carl is an accomplished freelance photographer and artist. When he goes home, even if only for a few hours, he heads to Kansas. Go to the interactive website tallcottonpublishing.com to see Carl D. Wiggins' photographs, artwork, and a listing of music and movies references in this book, among other things. Cover artist Peter Duggan has a few pieces of her art for sale on Redbubble. She could be found by typing God is Nowhere 666 in search, no spaces. Also, most of her work is on Facebook under Peter Duggan. This has been Talking Dog and the Motherlode, Volume 1, written by Carl D. Wiggins, narrated by Buzz Blackburn. Copyright 2018 by Carl D. Wiggins. Production copyright by Carl D. Wiggins.
Audible hopes you have enjoyed this program.